Well, hi, this is Philip Schlump with the 1015 podcast, and I'd like to welcome you back, and we're going to talk a little bit about one of the trends in computer science that is going to have a lasting impact, at least I think it is, and I'm going to explain why that impact is going to be lasting. And that's a thing called cryptocurrencies. Underneath the cover, they rely on a technology called a blockchain. What's a blockchain? How does it work? And why are cryptocurrencies and blockchains important? Collectively, these things together allow a thing called a smart contract. And where do smart contracts fit in this, and what are they? So, with no further ado, let's talk about what's a blockchain. First of all, why is it important? You know, back in the 1990s, late 1990s, somebody at CERN, the physics lab, developed this unusual technology for building pages that allowed you to display mixed text and graphics and have links. He called it hypertext markup language. And you look at that and you say, well, it's a nice thing, but is it world-changing? And today we have from that the World Wide Web, and the largest companies in the world, like Amazon and Apple, rely tremendously on this. Virtually all new software development when they deploy products is done via web interfaces using this technology. And this technology sits on top of the ability to copy things. So when you go out to Amazon.com and you bring up the web page, it makes a copy of that web page on your local computer. And then it reads through it and it finds all the images, all the style sheets, all the other pieces that go with that, and it then downloads and copies those to your computer. So you end up with a copy of the entire page. Now, the browser is very clever. It starts displaying stuff before it has all the pieces. Lots of things are going on. But basically, at the end of it, if you just sit there and wait a minute, you end up with a copy. Now, your copy is an exact duplicate of the original information. So you have a complete duplicate, and this means that it is indistinguishable from the original in a lot of ways. Now, let's put this in a different context. So let's say that I have a ticket to, a Broadway play, and I know that I can't go for whatever reason, and I'd like to sell that ticket. Now, if you do it over the web, then you make a copy of this on the web, and then somebody else downloads a copy of the ticket, and how do they know that they actually have the ticket? That's the question. There's no guarantee. In fact, the guarantee would be the exact opposite. What they have is a perfect duplicate of the original, not the original. And that it limits what you can do with the web. Now, with a blockchain, we can actually transfer and guarantee the transfer of the ownership of an original from a source to a destination. And that ability to transfer content, whatever that content is, be it a cryptocurrency Bitcoin, or a ticket, or some other piece of information, like, say, the ownership title for a piece of land from one person to another, means that we can actually use these computers in a completely different fashion from the way the web works. Now, there are a lot of other things that go along with this. Blockchains have security based on cryptography that is really strong and works, and we can explain why it works and why there's guarantees on it, and make you believe that, yes, this security actually works. And that's an important piece too. But the ability to transfer originals so that the original person that has it no longer owns it and the new person that has it does own it is probably one of the key pieces. And the establishment of trust that that original has been transferred. Those are the two key pieces in blockchain. Now, we're going to go into a little bit of details of how it does this and why, but let's talk about what the marketplace is for originals and how important it is. For instance, guarantees that things are original. You go out and you buy an expensive handbag. And I know that as a guy, I'm probably not going to buy very many expensive handbags, but my wife might. And that handbag is $1,500 for a handbag. Believe me, as a guy, I don't quite understand this, but it's important that it's $1,500 for a handbag. Now, what's the guarantee that this is not a forgery, a fake that's being sold with the same brand name and looks like this expensive handbag, but is in fact a fake duplicate? Well, there isn't a lot. In fact, there's a chance that they produced fake duplicates out of the exact same factory with the same materials, with the same labor, in the same country as the real originals. They just didn't pay the designer their percentage cut for these fakes. So they were supposed to produce 10,000, but instead they produced 15,000. And they sold off that extra 5,000 at a huge markup now for the manufacturer because, they didn't have all the expenses. So they cheated. So this fancy handbag might be real and it might be a fake. But now suppose that we can add to that handbag a little device, a NFC chip, that allows it to go out and, with an iPhone or an Android, communicate with the blockchain and say, yes, this is really an original. Or, no, this isn't. It's a fake. It's missing the chip, or the chip isn't authentic. Now suddenly we have the ability to go from, it's a copy in something on the computer, which lots of things on the computer get copied. We have the web. To actually having, no, in the real world, this is the original. And what are the scenarios for cheating then? Well, I guess you could go buy an original bag, and if there's no way to duplicate that chip, you could destroy an original bag, put it in the fake, and now you'd have, what? A Frankenstein bag? But the amount of cheating that's going to happen since you had to pay for the original isn't going to be very much, because guess what? You still had to pay for the original, and now you have to pay for the fake so that you can make the fake look like an original. The cost is not there. There is no profit. And how common is this kind of a scenario? Harvard Business Review last year did some analysis and figured out that counterfeit goods, we're talking about coffee, tobacco, handbags, the steel for building nuclear reactors. This happened in Japan last year, or the year before, It happened 2 years ago in Japan that somebody faked the steel for building the containment vessel for a nuclear reactor. It was caught late in the process, and that's $100 million whoops. Can you imagine the risk that's involved if you use the wrong steel and the nuclear reactor containment doesn't work? Some of this stuff is really, really expensive. And you add up all of these different things in fakes. They figure that 10% of everything Amazon sells in Canada is a fake forgery. You add this up. And lots of times we think about big businesses where they've got like $4 billion worth of this or $6 billion. No, we're talking $5.6 trillion a year in forgeries and fakes. 5,000 to 6,000 billion. Suddenly, this starts to become, wow, this is really important. Let me give you another example of something where we'd like to be able to assure that we are dealing with the originals and transferring the originals and that they're searchable. In Estonia a few years back, 3 years ago, they converted all property titles in the entire country to being on a blockchain. So, yes, this is public record. You can search it. You can find out who owns it. You can find out if there's a lien on it. And you do this search on a piece of property costs 20 euros, about $22 US, $23 US. And it's done in under a minute. You get the search results. It's guaranteed to be authentic because it's coming off of a blockchain where there's strong cryptographic proof that what you're seeing is real. And you're done. So if you go to buy a house in Estonia, you want to do a title search, you want to make certain that the person that's claiming is selling the house is really the owner, that there's no liens, they haven't gone off and put on a new roof for $11,000 and not paid the contractor, and now they're going to sell you the house and not pay the contractor. You want to make these set of guarantees about it. So you do a search, you go, okay, yeah, you're the owner, yeah, it's clear title, you own it, so you can sell it. Now, in the U.S., what we do is we have on paper, by and large. In Wyoming, it's about 70% still on paper. In Georgia, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, it's about 60% on paper. So you look at entire states, and this is still paper records for titles on property. And if you want to buy a house, and a lot of you are going to get out of college and you're going to want to go buy a house, so this is going to affect you. You are going to hire a title company to do a title search. And because this is on paper and they have to look through real books to find the titles, you're also going to want to get title insurance. The insurance is to insure against the title company not having made a mistake and missed something. So they're going to give you a report on this thing in about, a week or 2 weeks that says that here's what the title looks like for this piece of property. Now, the National Realtors Association has estimated that the average cost for a home for title insurance and title search is $3,400. And in 2019, 5.1 million houses were sold. You multiply this together, and this is $19 billion of economic activity, okay, that could be replaced instead of $3,400 with about a $20 search on a blockchain. And you start saying, how many things have titles? How many things have ownership? How important is this concept of transferability of ownership to the economy? And when somebody like Gartner, which is a forecasting group in the computer and technical fields, does this, they say that within 15 to 20 years, we're going to see that most of these things will have been transferred onto a blockchain. And that the size of the IT industry that's going to be dealing with these blockchain pieces and transfers of ownership is going to be about 2% of the world economy. Right now, all the stuff in all computers is 3%. So this is a more than 50% growth in the entire IT field that is just focused on blockchain. Now, there's one other thing in blockchain that's going on, and that's a thing called smart contracts. Smart contracts take this concept of transfer, and instead of just from one party to another, establish a set of rules around it and allow multi-party computation. So generally speaking, the programs tend to be kind of simple, as in it's just a few parties, and the rules are not complex. So the code behind a smart contract tends to not be terribly complex, but allows us to gain the trust and the verifiability and the sharing of data that we get with a blockchain. And that also figures into this entire process of this becoming, almost as big as the entire IT industry is today. So that's one of these trends. Now, smart contract, since it has a nice name, okay, it gets a lot of fanfare for being a special thing. But in reality, the special part of smart contracts is they have to work forever as software, so testing is absolutely critical, to the point where smart contracts these days, a lot of them are being formally verified and mathematical proofs are being done on them. And they're a piece of code, a simple little program that does a task on a blockchain. Those are the special pieces. Now, here at the University of Wyoming, we have two pieces that should be of interest to all the students in this class. The University of Wyoming is one of the original research institutions that's been into formal verification of software. And this has been going on from the very beginning of the computer science department here. One of the original professors that founded the computer science department, Dr. Cowles, that's his field of specialty, the head of the department, that's what he works on. And there's a bunch of us. In fact, there's a research lab now that's been funded by a company called IOHK that is doing formal verification and proofs of software, specifically smart contracts, because IOHK is a blockchain company. So we have research going on right now that is not just, related to this, but very, very relevant. So if you're going to go on to doing something like a master's here, or you want to be working in a research lab before you graduate, or you want to be looking at a multi-million dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars international company that's located here in Laramie, Wyoming for jobs, you need to be thinking about blockchain because that's the stuff we're working on. And there's also a blockchain center of excellence. There's been 19 bills passed by the state that relate to blockchain here in the state of Wyoming. So there's a lot of activity here in Wyoming on this. And Wyoming is one of the leaders in the world on blockchain and blockchain technology. So that should be very relevant to everyone in this class. And also, another thing that should be very relevant is cryptocurrency. So what is a cryptocurrency? A cryptocurrency is basically, I want to transfer a asset that is known to me, And this might be a coin on a blockchain from me to someone else. And payments in the past have been done through centralized services like Visa. Most of you don't realize, but Visa takes between 2 and 5% of the price of the product. So it's very, very expensive. If I go and buy a camera lens for $1,000, that could be $50 that's going to Visa for doing this transaction. Now, if I could buy that camera lens using a blockchain, suddenly the price on an expensive blockchain like Ethereum will be something around $2 instead of $50. And on something like IOHK's blockchain, it's going to be 0.02 of a single cent to do that same transfer. So this is a huge leap forward in terms of being able to do financial transactions with a computer, because this is a means by which, instead of having all of these people and systems and things going on that were designed 50 years ago for things like credit cards, we're using modern technology and encryption to guarantee the behavior, and it's all done with computers across a distributed system. So there are fundamental reasons why cryptocurrencies are going to make a huge impact using this underlying blockchain technology to change the financial world. I'm going to go back to houses for a second. Someday you're going to go buy a house, and as it stands today, you would probably get a mortgage and you would fill out paperwork for a mortgage. You'll find out that this form is in like 6 copies that you have to print on real hard when you use a pen so that it makes copies on all 6 copies. And what happens right now with that is that form will be faxed. Yes, people still use fax machines, literally, from the United States, probably to a data center in Dubai. And they have a whole bunch of these that employ thousands of people. And the bank that does the form is going to take this form, enter it in their data center, enter it into their database, and then they're going to hold on to it. Now, because of the way the market works, they're going to hold on to it for a little while, and then they're going to bundle it up with a bunch of other mortgages, and they're going to sell it. And each one of these mortgages that they bundle up and sell is going to go to a new financial institution. And that institution is going to get a fax with all the forms, and they're going to sit down, probably in Dubai. Most of these are happening in Dubai. I don't know why, but that's where these data centers are. And they're going to take, say, 6 of these mortgages, and they're going to hand enter the data off the mortgages, off the fax, into their system. Now, I think you can realize that this is not particularly an efficient process. Imagine for a moment that you could have the original bank enter the data without mistakes. That's an important piece here, because those mistakes are very expensive, and enter that data just once, where it was stored encrypted on a blockchain with a thing called a hash to protect the validity of the data itself. So we can guarantee what they entered is really what they entered, not something else. And if they made a mistake, they're still going to make mistakes, but it will be right there at the source where, you can look at it at the issuance of the loan and say, no, that's not how I spell my name. Fix it. And they can fix it right then. And now, instead of having it re-entered multiple times, usually on an average mortgage 7 times, instead of having it entered multiple times, we simply transfer the data on the blockchain from entity to entity, and suddenly that process that used to cost many, many dollars every time this happened is costing 1/100th of a cent. And it's done once, done right, and it happens almost instantaneously. So instead of it taking weeks for you to get a mortgage, it takes minutes. Now, whenever we go from one of these expensive systems to one of these less expensive systems that's faster, this means that the bank is more productive. It means you're happier as a customer. It means that things happen quicker and easier, and that is productivity in the economy, and the economy is growing. That's what it takes to grow an economy, is technology that improves the situation. Now, I know some people, they run around and they say, well, people are going to lose their jobs. Let's think about this for a second. Have you ever heard of a windshield wiper? Some of you have. Okay? Or a computer. How about both of those things? A computer around the turn of the century was usually a woman that did computations in a shop by hand and did the computation. that profession was replaced by machines. A windshield wiper was a person that stood on the running boards of your Model T, let's say, and that person reached out with a squeegee when it was raining, and they were standing outside holding onto the side of the car as you drove, and they wiped your windshield for you and squeegeed it off. That was replaced by a little motor and an arm that did the squeegee. So technological innovation replaces jobs. But I've noticed in between 1900 and now that those jobs have been replaced, but we don't have mass unemployment everywhere because nobody ever retrained and moved on to doing something else. In fact, if we look at innovation and progress in the world, this has been an ongoing thing for hundreds of years, and yes, people have adapted and new jobs have been created. And new things happen. In 1900, nobody was planning on being an airline pilot. It didn't exist. Today we have airline pilots. And yeah, we're heading an economic bump where a lot of them are unemployed. But yeah, there are new professions and there are new things to do. And I don't look at some of these old professions as being anything I would want to do. Would you want to stand on the outside of a car during a rainstorm and squeegee the window for people? I don't think so. Okay? So this is what progress is about, is building better things, making them faster, and blockchain is one of those better things that's come along that's going to have a huge impact for years and years. And with that, we'll catch you next time.